I mentioned in my last video that I was doing this top-down 2D game. Also, I mentioned the story of the game based on a movie called Wall-E, but I had to change it to this 3D game. Alright, I wanted to make sure that making a game based on a movie script or a game story is illegal or not, because somewhat I tried to copy a movie for this game.
FBI, open up!
So I searched it on Google to make sure my game is okay with that. After several experiments, I came across this. As it says, it is illegal if you copy someone created character or a name directly to your project, even if you don't copy the exact story they created. So, well, even if that wasn't the case, I want to change my game a little bit to make it a bit more interesting. As you can see, my game is quite bad and boring. In order to make a good game, either you should be having a good concept for the game, or you gotta work hard on eye-catching graphics. Games like Minecraft doesn't have good graphics, but the concept of the game is really catchy. But for my game, it doesn't have either one of those. So I wanted to change its graphic because I'm really terrible in making good concepts for games. But instead of making good graphics for my 2D game, I totally converted it to this 3D game. Because I thought it is easy to handle kind of lighting and shading with 3D games. Because we don't really need digital tablets or anything for modeling, like making 2D graphics. And also we can make our own models without putting much effort. But working on Unity 3D for the first time was a little bit complicated. But fortunately there are extensive amount of YouTube tutorials out there like Brackeys, so it became a little bit easy. So let's go back about 3 weeks and see how I come up with all this so far. So first I open a new Unity 3D project and add a capsule to represent the player. And then I imported all my previous script from my Unity 2D previous project, because in that project I completed somewhat like I implemented player movements, attacks and bunch of other things. So I kind of wanted to reuse those scripts instead of making all from A to Z. So we can simply convert the 2D to 3D like this. Okay, I ran into considerable amount of errors, so I had to fix those errors before doing anything. So I replaced some of new codes and deleted some of those, and after a few hours of working, I made the player move. Now he can move around using WASDs. Then I wanted to make a proper player model for this capsule. For that, we got a bunch of modeling softwares like 3D Studio Max, Unity's own Pro Builder, and also Blender. I had a bit experience on 3D Studio Max before, so I started working on 3D Studio Max. It should be working. Or not. Then I searched for Blender and installed on my computer because it was completely free. But I don't know the very first thing about Blender. Thankfully there are a bunch of tutorials in YouTube, so follow some tutorials. I made my very first model in Blender. It was a nice hammer, but what can hammer do on my game? So I quickly created this character model and put him inside of the Unity, which is really terrible model by the way, because it doesn't have arms, legs. Okay, then I made arms separately. I want them to attach separately to the player. Then I did some coding and now he can use his arms. Okay, now he can move his arms towards the mouse position. In this case, we want to get the mouse position in the 3D world. Unlike 2D dimension, it is a bit tricky at this time. So all we have to do is convert the mouse position to world position, and Unity generates a raycast from the mouse position towards the 3D world, and it detects any collide in the scene. Using this technique, we can make the player focus towards the mouse position. Then the player needs some method to attack. So I created some weapon models in Blender and imported to Unity. But the player arms are lack of fingers. They are kind of weird. If I add weapons over it will look weird. So instead I completely removed the arms and switched them to weapons. Then I did some coding. After finishing all, he can fire towards the mouse position using weapons or arms. Then I created different projectiles using Unity's particle system and also added some different weapons. Also, I changed the player's model a little bit and add more functions. So now he can look towards the firing direction as well. Then I made an inventory to the player. So then he can store different items there. Also made quick UI system for the inventory. I made some icons for the items in the inventory using Photoshop. I didn't draw anything. Instead I switched the camera background to solid green color and captures the images. Because I assembled most of my 3D models inside of the Unity, so I didn't know how to get them back to Blender in order to make proper rendered images. But green screen just worked for me. And then I made some different pickups items like medkits, batteries for gain power, and also some specific items. In the game we don't lose our ammo, instead we lose power. Consuming batteries will increase the power level and taking these will increase the health. And the next really important thing was the camera setup. Talk about cameras, there are different cameras like these. Not these cameras, I mean the Unity's cameras like third person camera, first person cameras. So I kind of want to keep the player visible. So I made a third person camera setup for the player and it should be working. After several experiments, searching on Google, I found the solution. When we try to move the camera with mouse inputs while player rotates using same inputs, it causes some unstable situation because both objects try to move with the same inputs. So to prevent that, I had to make the camera movements apart from the mouse inputs. So I had to add the keyboard's inputs to move the camera. Obviously, which is not quite good, but it is okay for now. Then I added more controls over the camera, like zoom in and smooth transitions. Next important task was making some enemies. According to the game, I blended some very basic models for enemies like this on Blender. They also look kind of weird, like the player. And then I did some coding and made some different weapons for the enemies and also created some different projectiles using Unity's particle system. Finally, the enemies can attack when I got close to them. Okay, then I quickly created terrain system using Unity's terrain tools and paint some textures on it. Then created quick grass textures in Photoshop and implemented some grass effects on the floor. The 2D grass textures always face towards the camera, so adding some motion blur will make it looking kind of real. Then I made some giant trees around using same texture painting, so no need to blend any tree models. Then I created some different items like wood chests and put them in random places. Also, smashing these chests, we can gain different items like medkits, batteries, and new weapons. Then implemented some specific items like Easter eggs. Not exactly Easter eggs, but these items will be hidden in the game, so hard to find, and also gain some specific benefits to the player. Like, for example, taking this hat will increase the player's armor. But I haven't decided all of the functions for those specific items. Also, I have no idea about the game's name, so if you have some suggestions, let me know in a comment. So that's all for this episode, I think. Still, I got lots of things to implement in this game, like lighting, making some sound effects. It's been almost 3 weeks since the day I started making this very first game on Unity, but I couldn't come up with a new video since that day. But the next video will be in hopefully 2 weeks, and that's it. So if you enjoyed the video, hit the like button just once and subscribe. So thank you very much for watching.